Do you believe that an angel can appear at the exact moment and disappear shortly after, as if it had never existed? It may seem like a scene from a movie, or one of those stories that are passed from mouth to mouth, shrouded in mystery and doubt, but what you are about to hear is real. A case that happened on a normal road, on a normal day, at least until the moment when everything got out of control. A truck driver, alone, at the wheel, on a long and silent route. The road seemed safe, the weather was good, but fate had other plans. A serious accident, a violent rollover, and death, which seemed inevitable, about to take its final turn. And then, in the midst of the chaos, when there was no hope left, someone appears. A man, a stranger, an unlikely rescuer who appears out of nowhere, as if he knew exactly where he was supposed to be. He didn't arrive by car. No siren announced him, and yet, he was there, with calm gestures, an inexplicable strength and a look that conveyed peace in the midst of despair. He went straight to the truck driver trapped in the wreckage, and, in a matter of seconds, pulled him out with almost supernatural ease. And that's when things start to get even stranger, because as soon as the driver was rescued and official help finally arrived, the man disappeared. No one saw him leave. Cameras captured him. No trace, no name, just silence. As if he had never been there, but the driver knew what he had seen, and he swore that the figure was not from this world. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover may surprise you. This story goes far beyond a simple traffic accident. It raises a profound and, at the same time, comforting question. Are we really alone in times of pain? Or are there invisible forces surrounding us, waiting for the right moment to act? Maybe you've experienced something similar. That moment when someone appears out of nowhere to help you, and then disappears like a breath. Have you ever been through this? Have you ever felt protected by something or someone that you couldn't explain? This feeling of having been saved by an angel may be more common than you think, and in this video, we'll delve deep into this universe of divine signs, angelic interventions, and real stories of people who were touched by the impossible. Get ready to see the spiritual intertwine with the real in unexpected ways, and be open to feeling, because some truths cannot be explained with words, but with what they make you feel inside. And it all begins with that impossible rescue. The truck driver, still stunned, tried to understand what had happened. The sound of the metal twisting still echoed in his mind, and the smell of gasoline mixed with dust lingered in the air. But there was something that wouldn't leave his memory, the look in that man's eyes. It was as if he had seen not only the body trapped in the wreckage, but also the frightened soul of someone who thought that would be his last day. And maybe that's why this story touches us so deeply. Because, deep down, we've all had a moment when we felt like someone or something got us out of a situation that we couldn't have gotten out of on our own. It could have been an accident that was avoided by seconds, a word that came at just the right time, or even a silence that soothed our hearts. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what touched you the most so far. Have you ever experienced something that seemed impossible, but in the end seemed to have a greater purpose behind it? Your experience can help other people see what may still be hidden in their own paths. And if you feel that stories like this make you reflect, feel and remember that there is something beyond what meets the eye, take advantage of this moment and like the video. It may seem like a simple gesture, but it shows me and YouTube that this content has value, that it deserves to continue, and that it can reach more people who may need exactly this message today. And if you've come this far and felt a connection with what's being told, subscribe to the channel. Here, each video is made with the heart, to bring more than stories, to bring meaning. And when you subscribe, you become part of a community that believes that there are signs, messages, and presences that accompany us, even when we don't realize it. And now that you know the beginning of this story, let's go back to that exact moment when help arrived, and the man disappeared as if he had never existed. The road cut through the interior of some state, in one of those regions where time seems to pass more slowly. There was little movement, almost no sign of life around. It was a long, narrow highway, surrounded by vast dry fields and a few trees twisted by the constant wind. The sky, that morning, was covered by an opaque layer of low clouds, which gave the landscape a pale color, as if the day had completely forgotten to dawn. It wasn't raining, but the air was humid, charged with a strange electricity, as if something was about to happen, and it was. The truck driver, a simple and experienced man, had been traveling since dawn. He had already faced many routes, some much more dangerous than this one. But, that day, something was different. He felt a weight on his chest that he could not explain. A silent restlessness had accompanied him since the beginning of the trip. Even without traffic, even with the road empty, he could not relax, and it was not just physical fatigue. It was a type of deeper tension, as if the backstage of reality were moving inside something invisible. In a matter of seconds, everything changed. A gentle curve, a bump in the asphalt, a distraction of a thousandth of a second, and then, the loss of control. The truck lost stability. First a jolt, then the sound of metal being dragged against the ground, tires bursting, windows shattering, the body shaking as if it were made of paper. The vehicle left the road and began to spin, falling violently. Off the shoulder, it was a brutal impact. A loud thud against the ground, followed by absolute silence, as if even time had stopped. Inside, the driver was trapped. One of his legs was trapped between the wreckage. His arm was injured, blood was running down his face. His breathing was short and rapid. The pain was throbbing, but less than the fear. There was no sign of anyone nearby. No houses, no cars. Coming from the opposite direction, no sound other than the creaking of the twisted parts of the truck, settling on the damp earth. He tried to scream for help, but his voice was weak. He felt completely abandoned. A kind of despair that slowly invades, until it takes over everything. And it is precisely in these moments, when it seems that help will not come, that something inexplicable happens. It was then that he saw him. A man standing a few meters away from the overturned truck, tall, plainly dressed, clean, in no hurry. It was as if he had been there even before the accident. The driver couldn't understand how he had appeared. He didn't hear footsteps, nor engine, nor any movement, just ... Him there, watching calmly, and then walking slowly towards him. There was something about that figure that didn't fit in with the place, a kind of contrast between the chaos around him and the almost supernatural serenity that the man conveyed. He walked over, looked the driver in the eye, and without saying a word, began to act. With a strength that defied all logic, he opened the twisted door, pushed aside pieces of metal, and pulled the man out as if he were simply helping someone out of a regular car. All in silence, no shouting, no apparent effort, just presence. And a presence that somehow filled the air with something that could not be explained but could be felt. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because when we talk about interventions like this, we are touching on something that goes beyond any rational explanation. It is not just about an accident and an unlikely rescue. It is about what lies behind these experiences, the hidden truth that there may be forces observing our journey, subtly interfering. At the exact moments when we are about to give up, it is at this point that the mind begins to open to new possibilities. Because when something like this happens, the person who experienced it is never the same again. There is a silent transformation that happens inside. The way we look at life changes. The perception of what really matters changes. And often, it all starts with an experience like this, something that gets out of control, that breaks us for a moment, and that forces us to recognize that there is something much bigger driving everything behind the scenes. Some people will call it a coincidence, others will call it fate, but some will call it a miracle, or, more accurately, divine intervention. Whatever the name, the feeling is always the same, that of having been touched by something that is not of this world. And from that moment on, life goes on with a new layer of meaning, a new mindset, a deeper understanding that we are not alone, we never have been. Even in the darkest stretches of our journey, even when all seems lost, there is something watching us, an invisible gaze, a silent presence, and when the rescue is over, and the official emergency arrives, the mystery deepens even further. Why did that man, that enigmatic figure, simply disappear? There was no trace, no car parked nearby, no witness who had seen him arrive or leave. No security camera recorded his passage. It was as if he had been just a breath of fresh air, a temporary, sending a messenger who came, fulfilled his mission, and left. Without a trace. This moves us because it forces us to rethink our certainties. What if angels really walk among us? What if reality is much broader than we can see? If you feel that this touches something deep inside you, comment below. That makes sense to me. I would love to read what you have to say, and maybe your experience will help shed light on the path of someone else who is going through something similar right now. But that's just the surface of what really happened on that road, because what comes after the disappearance is even more shocking. Time seemed to freeze the moment the truck left the road. There was no warning, no chance to react. Only the sudden brutality of a fate that revealed itself with overwhelming force. The vehicle, loaded and heavy, completely lost control as it made a seemingly harmless turn. It was as if something invisible had pushed the truck off the road, a bump in the asphalt, perhaps, or a minor mechanical failure that no one has been able to confirm since. But for those inside the cabin, none of that mattered. What followed was a sequence of seconds that seemed to have no end. The first blow was sharp, hard, like a punch coming from all sides at once. The metal frame began to bend. The windshield shattered into pieces that scattered through the air like shards of ice. The truck spun once, twice, until it finally tipped over, smashing its side against the ground. Inside, the driver felt his body being thrown against everything. Pain came along with confusion. The dashboard lights flashed. There was smoke, a strong smell of oil and burning rubber, and the cabin, now turned on its side, became a metal prison. Tight and suffocating. He tried to move, but his leg was trapped. Blood was running down his scalp, blurring his vision. There were deep cuts on his arms, on his face. The air felt thin, and the silence. The kind of silence that is not calm, but ominous. The kind of silence that screams of the total absence of help, no sound of approaching cars, no human voices, only the unsettling creak of metal adjusting itself, as if the truck itself were trying to settle into the new scene of the tragedy. Time passed in a strange way. He couldn't tell if it was 5 minutes or 50. The only certainty was that, with each passing second, his strength was diminishing, the pain was increasing, and the feeling of being completely abandoned in the middle of nowhere grew like a lump in his throat. It was at that point, when everything seemed to be falling apart, that he thought, this is where it ends. And it wasn't a dramatic thought. It was just what made sense given what was happening. The mind begins to accept the worst when all signs point to the end. And he was accepting it. But it was precisely in this silent surrender that something happened, an almost imperceptible change in the air. It wasn't a sound that caught his attention. It was a presence. Something that simply, appeared, as if it had been there forever, but only now was making itself felt. There were no bright lights, no voices from beyond. There was just a man. He had appeared out of nowhere. His feet were firmly planted on the damp floor, his posture serene, and his eyes fixed on the twisted cabin. A man with a calm expression, with no signs of fear or haste. His appearance was not striking. He wore simple, discreet clothes, but there was something impossible about that figure. The fact that he was there, alone, with no vehicle nearby, no sign of arrival. The truck driver didn't have the strength to speak, but his eyes met his for a brief moment. And in that look, there was something indescribable, a mixture of compassion, authority, and a strange certainty, as if he already knew exactly what to do. The man approached the cabin with slow but sure steps. He touched the hardware with his bare hands, and what seemed impossible began to happen. Parts of the structure gave way. The door, which was completely stuck, opened with a soft crack. The driver's leg was freed. He was removed from there with firm delicacy, as if he knew that every movement carries an invisible impact, not only on the body, but also on the soul. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when we talk about moments like this, we are also talking about invisible decisions, about internal revelations. Because, contrary to what people think, sometimes the greatest transformation does not happen in the body that is saved, but in the consciousness that awakens. That extreme experience of being face to face with one's own mortality generates a fall, a rupture in the illusion of control. And there, in that moment of near death, there is a kind of hidden truth that is revealed. We are fragile, we are fleeting, but perhaps we are being cared for by something greater. And the strangest thing is that, when help actually arrives, the paramedics, the firefighters, the police, the man is no longer there. No one has seen him. No one recognizes him. There are no witnesses, no reports of anyone having passed by before. He simply disappeared, and the driver, still in a state of shock, tries to explain, tries to ask questions, tries to find some logic, but the only thing he finds is the silence of those who do not know what he is talking about. The one who saved him seems to have been just a vision, a mirage, or something much more real than any physical presence. The impact of this is not small. It shakes up our belief systems. It opens up space for new interpretations of life and death, and everything that once seemed fixed now seems malleable, as if the human journey were intertwined with other forces that we cannot see, but that touch us at the most unlikely moments. Perhaps this is the role of some extreme experiences, to take us out of our spiritual comfort zone, to force us to reconsider our certainties, and to remind us that there is more behind the scenes of reality than we imagine. Write in the comments, I'm on this journey too. If you feel like you've experienced something that can't be explained, but that has transformed you from the inside. Because sometimes, just by recognizing the invisible, we start to see things with different eyes. And there is one more detail in this story that has not yet been revealed, something that will change everything you thought you knew about that moment of rescue. He was still trying to figure out whether he was awake or trapped in some kind of delirium caused by the pain and impact when he first saw the man. He had appeared out of nowhere. Literally, out of nowhere. There was no road nearby, no sound of an approaching engine, no sign of anyone else being around. It was as if he had been placed in that exact spot in space, at that exact moment, for a single purpose. His presence caused no alarm, quite the opposite. It was a serene, almost silent presence, but one that filled the room with an energy that was hard to explain. The man didn't seem to be in a hurry, but he didn't hesitate either. He walked through the wreckage naturally, dodging loose wires, pieces of glass, and metalwork as if he knew exactly where to step. His eyes were fixed on the cabin, and for a moment the driver wondered if he was real, because nothing about the man matched the context. His clothes were clean, undamaged, without dust or scratches. No sign that he had walked through this terrain. No footprints, no labored breathing, as if gravity worked differently around him. As he approached the cabin door, he paused for a brief second, as if listening to something no one else could hear. And then, with disconcerting calm, he placed his hands on the dented metal. And what had been completely locked, sealed like a trap, simply, gave way. The door opened with an almost symbolic creak, as if it had been waiting for that touch to finally release the prisoner. The driver felt the air rush into his lungs. It was as if, until that moment, he had been trapped not only physically, but emotionally. Trapped in fear, in the certainty that this was the end, but the presence of that man changed everything. Without saying a word, he reached out to the driver firmly and gently. Nothing seemed improvised. Nothing seemed uncertain. There was a precision in his gestures that only those who have seen this kind of thing understand. It was as if he had done it 1,000 times, as if he were part of an invisible cycle that only activates in extreme situations. And there, on that side of the road, amidst the wreckage, the transformation began. Because when someone who has no explanation appears and saves you from death, some part of your worldview falls apart. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Because this kind of experience is not just about the physical act of being saved, the most profound impact happens behind the scenes of the mind and soul. It is as if a curtain is pulled back for a few minutes and a spark of a hidden truth that most people spend their entire lives ignoring is revealed. What this man did, how he appeared, how he acted, and how he disappeared, all of this forms a symbolic mosaic of something much greater. A spiritual journey that begins when ordinary reality bends before the extraordinary. And it's not just about believing in angels or not. The issue goes beyond faith. It's about perception, about being attentive to what moves in the gaps between the visible to the invisible decisions that completely change the course of life. It's about understanding that certain encounters are marked in dimensions that our logic cannot yet reach. The driver, even injured and in shock, realized that there was something in that figure that transcended any rational explanation. The man's gaze, that calm, deep, almost eternal gaze, didn't just follow him with compassion, it followed him with purpose. As if he knew exactly who was there. And why. After he was removed from the cab, the driver still tried to say something, ask a question, perhaps find out the name, understand who that man was, but when he turned his head, he was no longer there. And this detail, which could have seemed like just another mystery, became the breaking point that would change everything he believed until then. Because it wasn't just the disappearance that intrigued him, it was the way he disappeared. Without leaving a trace, not a sign, as if he had never set foot there. And this caused an internal change, a change in the mindset of the truck driver, who, until then, had been living on autopilot. The absence of concrete explanations forces the mind to work in a different way. What does not fit into the patterns of logic needs to be processed in another way, through feeling, and feeling is what left the greatest impression on that man after that day. He could not explain who the stranger was, but he knew with a deep certainty that it was not normal. It was as if a messenger had been sent, not to impress, but to intervene, in a timely, precise, and silent way. And it is curious how these presences, when they appear, do not seek recognition. They do not want to be seen or remembered. They fulfill a mission and leave. As if the very simplicity of the act were part of its power. And this forces us to reconsider our ideas about what is sacred, because perhaps the sacred does not need a stage. Perhaps divine intervention manifests itself precisely in moments when everything seems too small to attract attention, like a truck overturned in the middle of a forgotten road, on an ordinary morning. And it is precisely then that the miracle chooses to happen. Comment here. That makes sense to me. If this story stirred something that was dormant inside you, because when we recognize what we feel, we begin to see more clearly what previously went unnoticed. But what that driver discovered later, when searching for answers to what he had experienced, is what really gives a new dimension to this story. What was most impressive was not what the man did, but the way he was. Everything about him seemed out of place, in common logic. Not because of his appearance, which was simple, discreet, almost ordinary, but because of what he conveyed. Without saying anything at all, he didn't speak, and yet he seemed to communicate everything that was necessary. There was something comforting about his silence. A silence that didn't weigh on anyone, that didn't cause discomfort, but rather a strange feeling that everything was under control, even when nothing seemed to be. The driver, still injured and confused, looked at that face and felt welcomed. Not in words, not in explanations, but in the look. A firm, direct, non-judgmental look, as if he could see beyond the injured body, beyond the fear and chaos around him, as if he could see into the soul. And seeing into someone's soul is a rare and profound act. It's the kind of thing you never forget. Those eyes, according to what the driver would later say, had a glow that didn't reflect external light, but seemed to be lit from within. A kind of peace that can't be learned, can't be trained. A peace that only exists in those who already know the truth behind things. And this is perhaps the most disconcerting thing. Because even when faced with a scene that would normally require urgency, that man moved with a lightness that contrasted with the desperation of the environment, as if time obeyed a different rhythm around him. No expression of haste, no false movement, just precise, measured actions. As if each gesture, had already been written somewhere before it even happened. And the driver, although he didn't understand how that was possible, trusted. Without knowing why, he trusted completely. This kind of trust is not born of reason. It is something that is imposed by vibration, by the energy of presence. It is like entering a room and immediately feeling that you are safe, even without knowing anyone there. This was exactly the feeling that the man gave. That of being in a safe place even in the middle of an accident, in physical pain. In confusion, this unusual presence awakened something in the driver that he could not name, something that mixed gratitude with reverence, as if he were in front of something sacred, but without ornaments, without ceremony, just pure. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject, because when someone transmits this type of energy, it's not just a different person, it's a rare frequency, a heightened state of consciousness that transcends identity, the body, and time. And this brings an important revelation. Perhaps, these encounters, however supernatural they may seem, are less about appearance and more about what that presence carries, the subtle impact it causes, the silent transformation it activates within those who witness it. There is a hidden truth that we don't always want to face. Sometimes, we are touched by the divine without realizing it. And when we do realize it, we try to rationalize it. We try to understand who he was, where he came from, how he got there. But these questions don't always have logical answers. Sometimes, what matters is not understanding with the mind, but absorbing with the heart. And that was what remained, in the driver's memory, what he felt, because after he was taken away, after everything was over, what he remembered most was not what the man said, because he didn't say anything, but rather what that look caused. It was the kind of encounter that doesn't ask for explanations, just acceptance. That doesn't demand proof, just openness. And for someone accustomed to living in a practical, material world where everything needs to be justified, this was a shock, an internal shock that started a silent process of change. Not a drastic, immediate change, but a change of mentality, of outlook, as if, from that day on, he could no longer see life in the same way. Because when you come across a presence like that, something inside you realigns, something awakens, something understands. And no matter how hard I tried, he could never fully describe what he felt. I just knew it was real, and more than that, that it was necessary. As if that moment had been tailor-made so that he would come out of it different. The transformation, in this case, was not just physical, it was deep, intimate, invisible to the eyes of those who see it from the outside, but absolutely real to those who bear the mark of the experience. Write it down. I'm on this journey. 2. If you've ever felt like you were touched by something bigger, even without knowing exactly what it was. Because, in the end, sometimes you just have to feel, and let that feeling guide you. And the most impressive thing about this story is that the more he tried to understand who that man was, the more revelations emerged that completely escaped common logic. And the more he sought answers, the more he realized that not everything could be explained in the usual way. Some revelations simply escaped logic. And perhaps that was the true purpose behind it all, to provoke an internal change, silent but profound. Because there are experiences that are not meant to be understood immediately. They are meant to transform, and each person will assimilate them in their own time, in their own way. Speaking of which, if this content resonated with you in any way, it might make sense to take a look at the material I left below. It's something I prepared with great care, especially for those who felt touched by this story and want to take the next step in this connection with the invisible. The name is Reading Your Birth Angel, and it was created to help you better understand what kind of personalized guidance the angelic kingdom has for your journey, especially in these moments of transformation that shake everything up inside. This material is complementary to what we talked about here and can save you a lot of time and practice, because it goes straight to the point. It's here in the description, but I might take it down in the next few days, so if it's useful to you, take advantage of it while it's still available. After all, some opportunities come at the right time, and then simply disappear. Just like that man on the side of the road. And the most intriguing thing is that, when the driver started talking to other people about what he experienced, some unexpected discoveries began to emerge. When the ambulances finally arrived, along with the firefighters, the scene that until then had been shrouded in heavy silence and a sense of despair changed almost instantly. Hurried voices began to echo along the road, mixed with the shrill, the sound of sirens that cut through the fog still suspended in the air. The lights flashed frantically, drawing nervous patterns in the dim light of dawn, and trained professionals advanced quickly towards the overturned truck, ready to carry out what seemed like a routine to them, the protocol for a serious accident. But when they looked around, searching for some sign of the man who just seconds before had rescued the driver from imminent danger, they only found the road empty, silent again, as if that mysterious rescuer had evaporated into thin air. The first to notice this absence were the paramedics, who were already attending to the driver, still visibly shaken, trapped between the wreckage of the cabin and in disbelief at what had just happened. They cautiously asked if anyone else had been with him when he was removed from the metal trap. The driver tried to describe the man, speaking of his calm, almost supernatural presence, the calm way he acted, as if nothing was too difficult for him. But there was no recognition, no echo of his words in those who heard him. No one had seen anything. No fresh footprints marked the damp ground, no vehicles left in a hurry, nor any sign that anyone had been there. The security cameras along the highway, which normally captured even small animals crossing the asphalt, recorded no movement. It was as if the man had never been there, as if he had been a shadow, a ghost who only existed to save and then disappear. This sudden disappearance cast an aura of perplexity, a mixture of disbelief and confusion among all those who arrived at the scene. For the rescuers, the most plausible explanation was an episode of mental confusion caused by the extreme trauma the driver had suffered, but for him, for that man who escaped death thanks to a stranger no one else saw, it was living confirmation that he had come across something that went beyond the limits of logic and reason. Because at that critical moment, when all seemed lost, someone or something intervened. It intervened directly, accurately, and then disappeared without a trace. An inexplicable blackout in the timeline, a deafening silence that carried a hidden truth, a truth that could only be felt, never fully understood. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Because this absence is not just a mystery that arouses curiosity, it has a huge impact on the minds of those who have lived through that experience. It is a sensation that drags thoughts away from common explanations and takes them behind the scenes of a reality that few can access, where decisions happen without us knowing. Invisible interventions that alter the course of our existence without us being able to control or often fully understand. It is this mystery that causes a silent, profound, and powerful transformation in the mindset of those who go through something like this, an internal metamorphosis that changes not only the way we think, but the way we feel and position ourselves in life. It is as if life suddenly gained a new dimension, where what once seemed solid and certain begins to be shrouded in shadows of doubt and silent revelations. The line that separates the real from the invisible, the tangible from the spiritual, becomes so tenuous that it almost disappears before the eyes of the soul. But this perception is not an invitation to live in fear or uncertainty. It is, on the contrary, an opening to a greater awareness, an expanded vision of what truly surrounds us and guides us, even when we do not realize it. Experiences like these challenge the decisions we make on a daily basis. They question the certainties we have built up over the years and create a channel for profound and transformative changes not only in the body, but also in the emotions and spirit. That driver's journey did not end at the moment of the rescue. In fact, it was just beginning, and the disappearance of the mysterious man only intensified the search for meaning, for answers that often remain hidden between the lines of what we experience, feel, and intuit. He spent days, weeks, trying to put the pieces of that invisible puzzle together. He spoke to friends, read stories, sought explanations about angelic interventions, stories of people who, like him, felt that they had been touched by something greater. Each conversation, each text, each memory brought to the surface deepened the transformation that had begun there, on that lonely road. And it was in this silent process, in this internal search, that he began to understand that the disappearance of the rescuer was not a coincidence. It was not a mistake or an illusion caused by stress, but part of a greater plan, a movement orchestrated at levels that escape human control. Comment here, that makes sense to me. If this story touched something inside you and made you question the hidden forces that act behind the scenes of our existence, recognizing that these forces are at work is essential for those who want to delve deeper into this journey of transformation and self-knowledge. And what happens after that presence disappears, that silence that speaks so loudly, is where the true revelations begin to emerge, opening paths that were previously closed to those who allow themselves to see beyond the visible. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, because when we try to understand what really happened on that deserted road, our minds end up filling up with questions that seem to have no clear, definitive answer. Who was that man who appeared out of nowhere? After all, was he just a good Samaritan? Someone who appeared at the right moment by pure coincidence? One of those rare synchronicities in life? Or was he something more than that? Perhaps a spirit of light, a presence that came with a specific mission, a direct intervention from the spiritual realm to save that driver? Or, who knows, an angel, a true divine messenger sent to act precisely at that decisive moment? These doubts are not born solely from our natural curiosity. They come from a deep search for meaning in the face of the inexplicable. Because when we come across events that escape common logic, we are forced to question and revisit what we believe, our concepts about the possible and the impossible, the tangible and the invisible. This affects our mentality, causing a kind of internal transformation, a space that opens up for reflection, for self-knowledge, for connection with something greater than ourselves. Accepting that there are mysteries that go beyond our understanding is not a sign of weakness. but rather a fundamental step for those who wish to advance on the journey of consciousness. When someone hears stories like this, it is natural to want to fit everything into logical, concrete, tangible explanations. The human mind seeks security in the answers it can understand, because the impact of these experiences is very strong, and dealing with the unknown can be scary. But the reality is that reason is not always capable of encompassing the immensity of what happens behind the scenes of the universe, where invisible, subtle, and powerful decisions can change paths and destinies, without us even realizing it. These interventions, small or grand, carry a weight that transcends time and space, an impact that reverberates far beyond that single moment. To think of a spirit of light is to enter a field where the invisible takes shape, where something that does not belong to the physical world manifests itself to protect, guide, and direct. If this was the nature of that man, the driver's experience is an invitation to expand our sensitivity and perception of the subtle presences that, amidst the rush of everyday life, go unnoticed. Recognizing these manifestations is an exercise in humility, openness, an invitation to respect and embrace the mystery that surrounds us. On the other hand, the possibility that it was an angel carries a deep symbolic and spiritual meaning. Angels have been seen for millennia as guardians, messengers, and agents of transformation who act in the most crucial moments of our existence. This belief is present in many cultures, religions, and traditions, reinforcing the comforting idea that we are not alone, even when we face the greatest difficulties. The angelic presence brings the feeling of care, of an invisible hand that guides and protects, giving hope and strength to move forward. But of course, it's also possible that what happened was a combination of unlikely factors, a sequence of coincidences that, when viewed closely, seem to defy the logic of chance. Life is full of these synchronicities, moments when everything falls into place so perfectly that it leaves us speechless. Often, we are so focused on controlling every detail that we overlook these little wonders, forgetting that perhaps the secret lies precisely in surrendering to the natural flow of existence, in trusting that, even when we don't understand it, a greater force is working for our good. This reflection on possibilities opens space for a deeper truth, a truth that few dare to explore. It is not necessary to have a definitive answer for the experience to be real and transformative. What really matters is to embrace what we experience, to let this experience transform our vision of the world, our perception of ourselves. True transformation happens when we let go of control and allow ourselves to get in touch with the mystery, that mystery that lives both inside and outside of us. When we are faced with unanswered questions, we are invited to make conscious choices about how we want to live and interpret our experiences. We can choose to cling to the familiar, the comfortable, the safe, or we can decide to embrace the journey into the unknown, a path that reveals the greatest opportunities for growth, learning, and profound revelations. This decision alone is an important step in building a new mindset, one that is open, receptive, and sensitive to the multiple dimensions of existence. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. If you feel that this search for meaning and connection goes beyond what meets the eye, and you are willing to explore the truths that are often hidden between the lines of the invisible. Because, in the end, it is in this search that we find true impact. The force that moves us and transforms us in our deepest essence. Because stories like this one about the driver who was rescued by a mysterious man are not just isolated cases, but rather part of a phenomenon that repeats itself over time and in different corners of the world, crossing different cultures, beliefs, and realities. There is a surprising collection of stories, many of them documented and shared by ordinary people, who have had very similar experiences, sudden encounters with enigmatic figures, beings that appear out of nowhere to save lives, offer help, comfort, or guidance, and then simply disappear without a trace. These narratives not only reinforce the idea that there is something beyond what we can see acting in the most critical moments, but they also reveal an impressive pattern, a silent, almost invisible movement that acts behind the scenes of existence. By observing these cases carefully, we notice that, despite the variations in context, location, and details, there is one thing in common that draws attention. The intervention occurs exactly at the moment when all seems lost, when the situation borders on the impossible. These figures, sometimes described as benevolent strangers, sometimes as spirits or even invisible guardian angels, manifest an extraordinary, calm, and almost supernatural certainty, which transmits security and hope to those on the brink of disaster. And just as they arrived, they disappear soon after, leaving the person who was saved with a profound mixture of admiration, perplexity, and, in many cases, even a disturbing feeling, the sensation of having experienced something that escapes any rational or conventional explanation. These accounts come from drivers, pedestrians, travelers, and people in busy or isolated urban environments, all describing encounters that seem simple but carry an immense spiritual and emotional burden. Sometimes the figure appears as an ordinary man, discreet and humble, at other times as a luminous, almost ethereal presence, who seems more like a spirit than a physical person. Regardless of the form, the impact of these experiences is always powerful, awakening an internal transformation, a change in the way these people begin to see life, destiny, and the connection with invisible forces that govern our world. These experiences reverberate in the decisions they make later, change perspectives, and expand consciousness to a deeper dimension of existence. It is important to note that many of those involved, before the experience, had a skeptical or limited mindset about the possibility of spiritual interventions. The shock of the moment, together with the inexplicable disappearance of the rescuer, serves as an invitation to break old certainties and make room for a new understanding. It is not a question of blindly believing, but rather of recognizing that life can surprise us in ways that defy all everyday logic. And accepting this possibility is often the first step towards a deep and true transformation. Furthermore, these cases show how the line between what we consider real and what we call mystery is, in fact, very thin and fluid. What seems unlikely or impossible to many becomes real and tangible for those who are able to look beyond the surface, to the nuances of the invisible that permeate our daily lives. Developing this sensitivity is a skill that can be cultivated, a new mindset that helps us navigate life's uncertainties with greater serenity, confidence, and hope. After all, knowing that we are not alone, even in moments when everything seems to be falling apart, brings a comfort that has a profound impact on the way we face challenges. When we reflect on these accounts, we realize that what connects all these stories is not just the event itself, but the lasting effect they have on people's lives. It is as if the encounter with this mysterious presence is a wake-up call, a clear sign that there is a greater force acting for our growth, protection, and evolution. This revelation, when assimilated, transforms the trajectory of those who experience it, creating a new awareness that manifests itself in choices that are more aligned with purpose and personal truth. Therefore, the experience of that driver who was saved and then saw the man disappear is not just an isolated miracle, it is an invitation for us to look more closely at the backstage of life, at the invisible interventions that, even without realizing it, help us move forward when everything seems to indicate that there is no more hope. This understanding changes our mindset and prepares the ground for us to make more conscious decisions, showing that, even in the darkest moments, there is always a light that never goes out, ready to guide and protect us. Comment below. This makes sense to me if you have heard, seen, or experienced something similar, or if this reflection is awakening something new within you, because recognizing these stories as part of a hidden and greater truth is essential for those who wish to continue deepening this journey of transformation and profound discoveries, because when we stop to reflect on the purpose behind miracles like this, our minds and hearts open to an understanding that goes far beyond what logic and reason can reach. Why are some people spared in moments of extreme danger? What is the reason that, among so many similar situations, only a few are saved by that mysterious, almost invisible presence? This question touches on a hidden truth, a spiritual dimension that speaks directly about life's mission, divine protection, and the invitation to a profound inner transformation. That is common to think that accidents, adversities, and trials happen randomly, as a result of chance or fate. But when we experience or witness something like this unlikely rescue, we realize that there is a greater intelligence operating behind the scenes of our existence. The protection that manifests itself is not a mere coincidence, but an intervention, aligned with a specific purpose, a subtle and wise decision that involves factors that escape our immediate understanding. This invisible force acts to preserve that which still has a mission to fulfill, a journey that must continue, with lessons, challenges, and a significant impact, not only on the life of the person saved, but also on everything around them. Paying attention to the signs of the invisible becomes, therefore, essential. These signs are the small reminders that the universe, or the spiritual realm, sends us so that we can realize that we are not alone and that there is a greater path laid out for each of us. It could be an unexpected encounter, a strong intuition, a vivid dream, or even a presence felt in moments of silence and reflection. These manifestations are subtle forms of guidance and protection, invitations for us to open the eyes of our soul and awaken to the possibilities that life offers when we connect with what is true and essential. In this context, the mission of life is not something distant or abstract, but something alive and present, which is revealed in the way we face challenges and in the decisions we make at every moment. When a person is spared from an imminent tragedy, they also receive an opportunity to reevaluate their path, to realign themselves with their deepest purpose, and to act with greater awareness and responsibility. It is as if it were a wake-up call to a new phase, where transformation occurs on multiple levels, mental, emotional, spiritual, and where each choice begins to carry a different weight, more connected to the essence of existence. This divine protection, therefore, is a reminder that there is a greater order, a plan that transcends appearances and immediate circumstances. It invites us to trust, even when everything around us seems uncertain or threatening. And this trust has a powerful impact on the mindset of those who experience it. It leaves fear and doubt aside to make room for hope, courage, and faith in something greater. It is in this change of perspective that true transformation begins, because what happens within us reverberates in the way we relate to the world and the people around us. It is also important to understand that this protection does not mean immunity to challenges, but rather the presence of a force that supports and guides us so that we can complete our journey with meaning and fulfillment. Each experience of salvation carries a lesson, a learning experience, that is linked to the development of our consciousness and the expansion of our understanding of the meaning of life. It is as if, through these moments of miraculous intervention, we are invited to look within and recognize that we are part of something much greater, that we are connected to an invisible web of energy, love, and purpose. In this process, the decisions we make become more aligned with this new mindset. Life is no longer seen as a series of random events and becomes a journey rich in meaning, where each step is guided by wisdom that comes from within and is reinforced by the connection with the invisible. The presence of that man who saved the driver and disappeared soon after is a symbol of this protection and this call for us to be attentive, awake, and willing to embrace the transformation that the universe offers. The message that remains, then, is an invitation for each of us to see the interventions that occur in our lives, whether large or small, as part of a divine plan, a roadmap for growth and evolution that deserves our attention and respect. Being open to this understanding changes the way we face difficult times and prepares us to receive the blessings that often appear disguised as challenges. It is in this awakening that we find the true meaning of the journey, one that goes beyond the visible and that transforms not only the destination, but also the soul. Comment below. This makes sense to me if you feel that these words touch something within you and reflect your own search for purpose and connection, because it is in this harmony that we build the strength needed to keep moving forward, discovering the revelations that the path holds and living with the certainty that, even in the darkest hours, the light is always present, waiting to illuminate our path. The more we open ourselves to this invisible field, the clearer it becomes to realize that almost nothing happens in a completely random way. Before something significant emerges on the visible plane, before the intervention, the deliverance, the reunion, or that unexpected turn that changes everything, there is a silence full of signs. And these signs, although subtle, carry immense power. They are like whispers from the invisible, gentle warnings that something is moving behind the scenes of reality. But to perceive them, we need to get out of automatic mode, slow down internally, and cultivate a more sensitive, more present listening. Maybe you've felt this before without knowing how to name it. A sudden discomfort in a place where everything seemed normal. An inexplicable desire to change paths. A dream that repeats itself with symbols that you don't understand right away, but that seem to leave a mark. Or that kind of chance encounter with someone who, surprisingly, tells you exactly what you needed to hear, even without knowing what you were going through. These things are not small. They are the first reflections of something bigger being prepared, a movement that precedes the impact. These signs that precede presence do not shout, they whisper. They are not meant to force your attention, but to awaken your consciousness. When you start paying attention, you realize that there is a different frequency operating there, a higher vibration, an energetic field that subtly changes around you. And it is precisely in this sensitivity that the transformation of your mentality begins. You stop waiting only for visible miracles and start recognizing the sacred in the details. Because the invisible almost always presents itself first, like this, between the lines of routine, behind the scenes of haste, in the silence between one decision and another. Some people call it coincidence, but over time, you begin to realize that there is a kind of spiritual intelligence behind these moments, an intelligence that seems to know what you haven't even been able to express in words yet. And then, suddenly, the pieces start to move. Your intuition intensifies, synchronicity increases, and you understand that you are being prepared, even if you don't understand exactly what for. This preparation often comes with a mixture of calm and restlessness, as if something is aligning inside and outside of you, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Many people report that, before a great deliverance or an obvious spiritual intervention, they began to have stronger premonitions, dreams full of symbols or sensations that they were being observed, not in an invasive way, but protected, as if a presence were there, following closely, just a thought away. And when this becomes constant, when you learn to respect these internal warnings, you begin to walk with more confidence, even without seeing all the steps ahead. Because something inside you begins to trust the invisible, not as an escape, but as a guide. These signs also act as a compass for the decisions you need to make. Sometimes, you feel an inexplicable block to doing something, and only later do you understand that that internal no was a deliverance. Other times, you feel such a strong urge to follow a path that doesn't make sense rationally. But everything starts to flow, almost magically, when you decide to trust. And this isn't magic in the fanciful sense, it's practical, living spirituality. connected to a level of wisdom that escapes the control of the mind, but that reveals itself in the coherence of events when you look back. There is a kind of peace that begins to set in when you accept that signs come before presence. It is an active peace that keeps you alert, open, with your heart awake to what cannot be explained but can be felt. And in this state, you realize that you no longer need proof to believe. You begin to recognize the invisible movements as a natural part of your journey, not as something extraordinary, but as something intimate, constant, essential. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. If you feel like you've experienced these signs, even if you've only just realized it, because recognizing the behind the scenes of the miracle is a powerful step toward the presence that is about to reveal itself. And it's precisely at this point in the journey that something even deeper begins to emerge. We silence the noise from outside and begin to listen to what is pulsing inside. Perceptions emerge that cannot be explained with logic, but that echo like truths within the soul. What if, deep down, these interventions that we usually call miracles are not as rare as they seem? What if, behind what we call coincidence, there is a subtle synchronicity, a silent choreography conducted by a greater intelligence that operates behind the scenes of reality? The hidden truth may not be in the answers we urgently seek, but in the details that we usually ignore, those that carry meanings that only reveal themselves when we stop, feel, and allow ourselves to see with the eyes of the heart. Think about a decision you made without even thinking, that ended up saving you from a difficult situation, or that delay that prevented you from being in the wrong place at the wrong time. A message from someone that appeared just when you needed strength, an internal impulse that made you change direction for no apparent reason. These seemingly ordinary fragments of life can be filled with purpose, presence, and care. Maybe they are not the result of chance. Maybe they are subtle touches from something that watches you, protects you, and guides you even when you don't realize it. And that changes everything. Because when we start looking through this more sensitive lens, more connected to the backstage of existence, life takes on another dimension. We understand that we are not out there in the world, that we are not just the result of our conscious choices, but also of what we cannot see, of the forces that work in our favor, in silence. Sometimes, as in the case of the driver, these forces manifest themselves in an extraordinary way, with a physical presence, with an impact so strong that it is impossible to ignore. Other times, the touch is light, almost imperceptible, but the consequence is always profound. These experiences transform the way we see everything around us. Haste gives way to attention. Skepticism gives way to faith. The rigidity of control dissolves into trust. Not because someone told us what to believe, but because something inside us awakened and gently showed us that there is a larger field where life happens, and when we allow ourselves to access this field, we begin to notice the signs, small, subtle, but full of meaning. That's why these stories are so powerful. They're not just moving tales, they're mirrors. Mirrors that remind us of something we may have experienced before, but didn't know how to interpret. Who hasn't had that feeling that someone showed up at the right time, said what needed to be said, and then disappeared in the same mysterious way they arrived? Who hasn't felt like they were spared something without knowing exactly why? What if something that seemed casual was actually a response, an invisible gesture of love? Perhaps an angel has crossed your path before and you didn't even notice. Maybe he or she presented himself or herself as someone ordinary, with simple clothes, a calm gaze, and brief words. Someone who left an immense impact, and at the same time, disappeared as if he or she had never been there. And only later, when your heart is still, does the realization come. As if a missing piece suddenly fell into place. As if, in the silence that remained, something whispered, you were not alone. These encounters don't need to be dramatic or cinematic to be real. Many of them happen in simple, everyday moments, but they leave a mark that never fades. Because what changes isn't just what happens outside, it's what changes inside. Your mindset expands, decisions become more conscious, and your perception becomes more refined, more attentive to the signs that life gives you. Signs that, before, went unnoticed, but now, you recognize them. Because your soul is awake. And that's what makes these experiences so powerful. They serve as a reminder that the journey is not random, that there is purpose, direction, and a greater power that knows exactly what it's doing, even when you don't understand, even when everything seems confusing or meaningless. Intervention may not always be what we expect, but it comes. Sometimes, as immediate help, other times as a change of course, still other times as a no, which later turns out to be the greatest of deliverances. When you begin to live with this awareness, something within you, anxiety gives way to confidence, doubt turns into intuition, and the need to control everything softens. Because you begin to understand that you are being guided, that there is a greater flow in motion, and that even in moments of darkness, there is a light that never goes out. So, if this story touched you in any way, if it awakened memories, intuitions, or even a desire to look at your own life more closely, comment below. I'm on this journey too. Because when we share these experiences, the soul finds resonance. And when we recognize the signs, even if discreetly, something inside us aligns. And this alignment is the beginning of a new stage, more conscious, more present, more connected to what really matters. And if you want to delve deeper into this topic and better understand how to recognize these subtle signs of divine intervention in your daily life, I have prepared a special material called Reading Your Birth Angel. It was carefully designed, in a practical and direct way, to help you connect with the personalized guidance of the angelic kingdom and navigate the transformations that may be emerging in your life right now. It's here in the description, but it may go offline at any time. So, if it makes sense to you, take advantage of it while it's still available. And now that your perception is more open, more aligned with this silent wisdom that inhabits the invisible, I want to take you even deeper into this journey, because the next step may reveal that which, until now, seemed impossible to understand. And if you've come this far with me, it's because, in some way, this message spoke to you on a deeper level. Maybe it sparked a memory, an old feeling, or just confirmed something that your heart already knew but hadn't yet put into words. And that's why it's worth continuing this journey together. If you feel that this content has brought you clarity, comfort, or just a new way of looking at the invisible that surrounds you, subscribe to the channel. It will be good to have you close by for the next reflections, and to show that you stayed until the end, that you followed every word, every nuance of this conversation right in the comments. This message was for me. That way, I'll know that you're one of those people who not only listens, but feels. And if this video touched you, leave a like. It helps this content reach more people who might need exactly that same connection right now. And look, there's a video right here that complements everything we talked about today. Click and stay with me there. We still have a lot to discover together.